Today I'm coming to you with a very different type of video. 2 years ago from the day that I post this video, my family lost my dad to a very short 3-month fight with cancer. You can't come away from that experience having not learned a lot and taken a lot with you and hopefully become better because of it. In those 3 short months, I learned so much from my dad about how it is to go through something like that with dignity and grace and respect, and I just learned so much from him. And on the other side of it, I ended up learning so much from the grace of my friends and family about what it means to support someone. And so I really wanted to share what I've learned from that experience, how you can be there for other people, different ways that you can honor a loved one. And so I wanted to share all of that. And my initial thought was that I was going to share all of this in one video. And the reality is that that's a lot of information. But I think it's most helpful to whoever is watching this if I sort of segment it out in smaller videos. The one thing that sort of sets up the tone for all those other topics that I want to discuss is sharing my story. But I guess I just thought, well, no one cares about my family's story probably, and so why would I share that? And that portion of it sort of threw me off, because would I share how to help people and be supportive to other people without sharing my story? It just felt disjointed. I will do a separate video on how to be supportive, things to say, things not to say, things that I've learned that are helpful when someone is grieving. But today what I want to share with you is my story, my family's story, a change in perspective that I had. I should preface this by saying that I live in Michigan. My parents and my sister have lived in Florida for a long time now. So like I said, 2 years ago from today, we lost my dad to cancer. So 3 months before my father passed away was 4th of July. My husband and I have always thrown a really big 4th of July party. And this particular year, we decided to go out big. We decided to get a band. Very last minute, my parents decided to come into town, which now I know was a complete gift. Over the course of that trip, my dad had stated that he felt some discomfort in his neck area. Once they eventually did get back home, I think it was about a week later, my dad was mowing the lawn and came inside to get some water and collapsed and passed out. After a 17-day stay in the hospital with biopsies, being told that you have cancer, no, you don't have cancer, oh yes, by the way, you do have cancer. Eventually we were told that he did have cancer and that it was stage 4, and that pain that he was feeling in the back of his neck was literally cancer eating through to his vertebrae. And the cancer was so far gone that they kind of couldn't tell where it started. They said it was lung cancer. It was documented as lung cancer. I personally feel like I don't know what it was, and it doesn't matter at this point. It was too far long gone. It eventually was everywhere, except for his brain. Amen, because we will get to that later. My dad was very alert and amazing, and thank God for him. He is what helped us get through this. So for me, I am in Michigan. My family is in Florida. I have 3 young kids that I stay at home with. So I decided that before the school year started and things got crazy, I would go out and visit. Now for me, it was really hard because, you know, I'm the daughter. I want to be supportive and I don't want to cry in front of him, and I want to be the rock. And I sort of didn't know what to say, which was a really weird feeling. It's a role reversal of now I'm here for you. So before I went to visit my parents, I was looking for a card to send my dad. I was at West Elm and they had a pop-up shop for local artists, and I found this card that just said "fuck this shit" on the front of it. This will sort of tell you the tone of my family. My dad is a very funny man, a very sarcastic man, a very dry sense of humor. I don't remember exactly what I wrote inside of it, but I think I said something along the lines of, number 1, like, fuck this shit. This is crazy. What has happened? But on the other hand, like, we're gonna fuck this shit. And so, like, we're gonna figure this out. I'm coming to you. We're gonna get all of our questions answered, and we're all in this together. So I was there for a few days and with him for some of his treatments and to ask the doctor tons of questions because I literally read a lot of books during that time of cancer and treatments and diagnosis and all of these things. And like, I thought that I was going to cure cancer myself. I was reading all these books, and I think in hindsight, the books and the research were calming my own anxiety-filled mind because it just gave me something to do. When I left and said goodbye, I remember that it was very much like an ambiguous goodbye. Like, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again. And so I hugged my dad, and I remember this vividly. I hugged my dad, and neither one of us wanted to let go. It was one of those long, just like, we're both in it type of hugs. And when he finally pulled away, he grabbed my face and he just said with a smile, "Fuck this shit." And we laughed and we cried and said goodbye. And I will remember that always. So I left Florida, came back to Michigan. It's a really weird feeling, I have to say, to have my own family, my husband and my 3 kids in Michigan, and have my original family, if you will, in Florida, my mom, my dad, my sister, and feeling a pull to like, I should be there. I should be where you guys are. And I had many conversations with my dad about it. And my dad was very adamant, of course, as he would have been, to say like, you're a mother first. This is your most important job. You need to be there for your family. And so even in the very end, you know, he was like, you don't need to come here to say goodbye. Like, your most important job is to be with your family. And I was like, no, I love my family, but being a daughter has never felt more important than being a mom. So I need to be with you. And just the pull of those 2 different things really kind of feels crazy in your heart. So over the next month or so, continuing on with chemo, radiation, I kind of had an epiphany at one point because I was living my normal life day to day, and I would be at the grocery store or out just somewhere, and I would see a man who looked like my dad's age or an older man. I would get really angry because I would think, my dad's never going to be that age. That's never going to be my dad. And that really ate me up. And I started to get angry when I saw like grandpas with their grandkids and thinking, my children aren't going to have that. And I really felt myself like going to a dark place that I didn't want to be in. And honestly, it wasn't until I wrote a letter to my dad, which I will share a little bit of that with you later, that I had a really big epiphany about gratitude and being grateful and being thankful for everything that I had in life with him, that I was really able to change my entire perspective and see things really differently. And it's something that carries me through today. I decided in mid-October to go visit my parents again. So I was there again for some chemo, some radiation. And while I was there, my parents sat us down and told us that the doctor had said that without chemo, he would only have a few weeks to live. That time when I left, another very memorable goodbye. My dad came to me very frail with a walker late one night and said all of the things that you would hope someone that loves you would say. How proud they are of you, how much they loved you, how grateful they are that they got to see you as a mother. And I was just standing there stunned and taking it all in, very aware that this was his goodbye. And I had nothing to say back because I was so aware that this was the goodbye. I had nothing to say except for I love you. But never did I love you feel so weightless and meaningless and insignificant. So when I left, I got on the plane. I thought, that was his goodbye. That wasn't my goodbye. So on that plane ride home, I wrote him a 4-page letter explaining all the reasons that I was so grateful that he was my dad and how lucky I was in this life to have had him. And I didn't know it at the time, but that would end up being the eulogy that I read at his funeral. It meant a lot to me that day that I read that to everyone, and it was something that I had already said to him. After I got home, my dad collapsed in the house again and had to go to the hospital and was in ICU. He ended up having a stroke while he was in the hospital. The doctors had officially said he has days left to live. Things are shutting down. So at that point, I decided if he was going to be in hospice, I needed to be there. Flew back to Florida. My dad saying, "You don't need to come here. I just saw you." But I decided that I needed to be by his side in the end, if I could be. And most importantly, that I needed to read him my letter, because he had gone right into the hospital after I got home and I never had a chance to read him my letter. So I flew back to Florida, and the first thing that I did was I busted through those doors and I said, "I need a moment alone with Dad." And I sat down and I read him my letter. And that letter is what got me through somehow. But it's really what helped change my perspective about thinking that we are in a shitty situation. How has all of this happened so fast? But I was like, no. Like, there's so many good things. There's so many good things. Some people don't have a father. Some people don't ever get to know their father. Some people lose their fathers much earlier in life. I had my dad for 36 years. It's almost like a reflex that I've had to train myself, that even still when I feel like I can't believe, like, how did that happen? How did 3 months, he went from being healthy to being gone. I'm just like, no, you had an amazing dad for 36 years. You had a dad who supported you and loved you and taught you so many amazing things about life, even on his deathbed. Don't you dare for 1 second be ungrateful for that. So I'll read you just a snippet of this letter. So I started off with saying how it could be very easy to feel unlucky at life and mad and sad about everything that had happened. But the truth is that we are so unbelievably lucky. How lucky are we to have been raised by a hardworking dad who sat down for dinner with us every single night? How lucky are we to have had a dad who valued his family and always put in extra hours so we could have a childhood filled with motorhome camping adventures? To Myrtle Beach, by the way. That's why I bought this pillow. How lucky are we to have a dad who supported us through college, sent me out into the world free of college loans, and sent my sister out into the world free of any guilt for leaving college early to play with puppets. She was a puppeteer for Disney for 10 years, which is really cool. And how lucky are we to have a dad who understood the need to spread our wings and move just about as far west and far south as you can from home. My sister lived in Florida, and I moved to California after college. It's easy to look ahead and get sad about what might be missed, but honestly, there is so much more to be thankful for. And then I sort of went into the highlights of his life and our life and what we had to be thankful for. Writing that letter really changed my outlook on a lot of things. It changed the way that I felt about seeing little old men at the grocery store that I used to get pissed off at. It changed that. It changed how I feel about having lost my dad. Instead of looking at what wasn't, I look at what was. And also, like, aging. I don't look at aging with any hesitation anymore. I think that as a woman, I'm 38, I'm close to 40. People don't want to age, and people are like, "Oh, I'm turning 40, don't talk about it." I just look at age completely differently now. I am grateful to turn 40 soon. I've said before that age is a privilege not everyone gets, and it's better than the alternative, and it's so true. Not everyone gets to be as old as we are right now, and so don't take that for granted, and don't be mad about turning 40. So somehow writing that letter was therapy I didn't know I needed. So I think my family spent more than 4 days, but I spent 4 days in hospice by my dad's side. But my dad was really funny, even on his deathbed. And how he faced those final 2 days, man, are we lucky. Like, he made it so easy for us. I mean, if you've ever been to a hospice, people are there at the end of their life. It's very somber. And he had us laughing for a lot of the time that we were in there. He was in a lot of discomfort, and he wasn't really talking a lot because he had that stroke. And I remember sitting by his side, and the door would creak open, and he would sort of look, like raise his eyebrows, like, what's happening? And I just at one point said, "Oh, it's just Mom." And he was like, "Ugh," which was just so funny, and was just like us. Like, it's just how he would have always been, like, ugh, okay. And it was just so funny, and it was like a weight was lifted off of all of us that we could still be us. And that was his gift to us. was that we didn't have to sit there and cry. We were just still us. And I remember sitting next to him at one point because he had lost 80-something pounds in 3 months. At the end of his life, you sort of blowed up a little bit, and he had some fullness back in his face. And I remember sitting next to him and saying, "You look good, Dad." And my sister was like, "You do look good." And then my mom chimed in, "You do look good." And he just sort of sat there and gave a face and was like, "Is that what's going to be on my epitaph? Hash brown, you look good?" And we all started crying because he confused a hashtag for a hash brown. And we were laughing to tears. Like, we literally were curled over, like knee slap laughing to tears. And I think I said something like, "What do people think of us down this hallway? We just keep laughing and we're gonna get kicked out of this hospice." And my dad just looked up and smiled and said, "We don't take things too seriously. It's just not our way." And it was just like, oh, it's just one of the most precious things that he ever said, because even on your deathbed, you don't have to take life too seriously. So there's not a lot of bad things that I can go through in life anymore and place too much emphasis on it. Because I look back at that and I think someone on their deathbed can literally sit there and say, "You just can't take stuff too seriously." That's a man with a lot of grace and dignity right there that I'm grateful I got to witness. So we were with him in the end. We were by his side when he took his last breaths. And when we got back to the house that night, we started reading his obituary. And I was like, well, Dad would not want a standard boring obituary. So we have to come up with a really kick-ass, hilarious, non-basic obituary. And that's just what we did. So I'll read you a snippet of the obituary. "With his family by his side, he kept us laughing right to the very end. As he said, to take anything too seriously just isn't our way. He had a dry sense of humor, strong sarcasm, a hidden gift of poetry. He believed that beer should be cold, barbecue should be burnt, Hawaiian button-downs paired with $10 cargo shirts from Sam's Club were formal attire. Always buy a lotto ticket, because you never know. And if all else fails, order a pizza." Something we did a lot growing up. "There will be no viewing, as he never wanted a funeral. He hated the idea of spending money on an uncomfortable formality with him as the center of attention. So you're welcome. He's requested to pay the bar tab over a cheers to his life with family and friends at his favorite hometown pub. He will forever be rolling his eyes at Mom's mistelling of his stories and over-exaggeration of the details. But most importantly, he was able to find humor in everything. Everything, even in death. So live like Larry and always find the funny."
Hello there.